Good afternoon, everyone. We have a case, jaundice with ascites in a 12-year-old child. Coming to the case, the child was a 12-year-old boy, full-term normal delivery, birth weight of 2.7 kg, born of a third-degree consanguineous marriage, hails from a village in Maharashtra. Presented with jaundice and anorexia for 2 months, edema feet and gradual abdominal distension for 15 days. Taken local Ayurvedic treatment and was not investigated.
Yeah, so let's wait here and let's ask the audience. What history would be relevant here now? You want to go further, what would you ask? What more would you ask? I want to just get the audience to pay attention. Altered sensorium, yeah, quickly. Again, the two of you. I want the pages. Bleeding tendency, yes. Altered sensorium, yeah, ahead. What else?
It's difficult to see from here.
Itching, we want to know whether there's itching, there's any cholestatic disease. Okay, how the child is growing, fever, anything else? Family history, important. Neurosymptoms, okay, why neurosymptoms? Consanguineous marriage, okay, you're thinking of some genetic disorder. Previous history of jaundice, important, yes. Anything else?
School performance.
Yes.
School performance, okay. So any abnormal movements? Anything else? Anything to add from the panelists?
No, I think most have been covered.
Yeah,
Most of them covered. Okay, can you just run through those slides?
There was no history of fever, abdominal pain or weight loss, no history of GI bleed or bleeding from any other side, no history of altered sensorium, no history of itching, breathlessness, no history of oliguria. There is a past history of jaundice at 7 years of age, lasting for 2 months. Then he took local treatment, but was not investigated. Etiology of liver disease. There was no history of drug intake prior to the onset of symptoms, no history of liver disease in the family, no history of blood transfusions or surgery. There is a history of hospitalization at 8 years of age with enteric fever. There is no history of any dehydrating event.
Panelists, likely to be drug on this? Dr. Save?
Yeah,
Patients come with jaundice followed by
yes.
ascites.
Yes, he's a 12-year-old child.
12-year-old.
Yeah, with the jaundice, so Wilson's is high on a card that to be
Okay.
thought for. Along with the Wilson's, we as a general pediatrician, autoimmune hepatitis goes hand in hand for us
Yeah,
actually.
no, I'm just saying let's focus on this
Yeah.
slide. Etiology, do you think it is drug-related problem?
Yeah, doesn't look like a
Doesn't
drug
look like.
related.
You, would you agree? You wouldn't expect
Sometimes
a drug?
the drug may aggravate an underlying problem. So
Yes.
the way it goes, it looks like a chronic liver disease, even though the duration may be like this, but it is a chronic liver disease, most likely metabolic. And then on top of that, it could have been a drug which have aggravated.
Yeah, so often drug is an acute precipitating factor in a chronic liver disease. I think that's an important point. No, we talked about family, blood transfusion surgery, you're talking of viral. He had some hospitalization. And why dehydrating even? Dr. Bawdekar, what is the relevance here? Anybody? Prize for that answer.
No, I'm just wondering whether they're talking about a butt chiari or
Butt chiari.
something that could be
Yeah.
precipitated by a dehydrating event.
Yes, we often get that. Okay, proceed.
On examination, weight of the child was 26 kg, which was less than third centile, height of 128 centimeter, less than third centile. Vitals were stable, icterus was present, hepatomegaly 3 centimeter with a span of 12 centimeters, firm and non-tender. Moderate ascites was present and spleen 2 centimeter palpable. Rest of the systemic examination was normal.
Okay, so can you summarize the case?
Case summary. A 12-year-old child born of third-degree consanguineous marriage, jaundice followed by edema, feet and ascites since 2 months with failure to thrive, hepatosplenomegaly and ascites. There is one history of prolonged jaundice in past at 7 years of age.
Yeah. So, panelists, come in. What next? What next?
No, so this is, there are three reasons to think that this is a definite chronic liver disease. 2 episodes of jaundice in the same child should automatically make you suspect that you'll need chronicity. And of course, the clinical history which you have over here and the examination does suggest a chronic liver disease, which is obviously decompensating right now. And at that particular age, if you are suspecting a chronic liver disease, which is primarily hepatic in origin, I would still, based on what was said, think of 2 or 3 in that order.
Yeah,
Wilson's,
well,
autoimmune, and hepatitis B. These are the things I would look at first, and then look for the uncommon ones later.
Sure. So what would you do next? Investigations? What next? How will you investigate the child? Simple.
Yeah, complete blood count as we go about, and then liver function test.
Yeah. Okay. So that's exactly what we did.
We have the investigations on presentation. Hemoglobin was on the lower side 9.6, platelets were 1.2 lakhs, albumin was 2.4, total bilirubin 7.7, direct bili 5.5, enzymes were elevated, alk-phos were 275, GGT was 42, INR was 1.5.
So Dr. Malti, do you want to interpret this?
Yes, here looking at the CBC, you have a low hemoglobin, but otherwise there's no evidence of hypersplenism in this. Albumin is low, indicating that the liver synthetic function has been disturbed for some time, so it's an evidence of a chronic liver disease. Globulin, I can't comment on that it's high, but bilirubin shows a cholestasis. But this AST, maybe the SGOT being high, indicates that it's more of a mitochondrial injury rather than a cytoplasmic injury, which we do see in cases of Wilson disease. And gamma GTP is normal. INR is okay because the child has no encephalopathy. So it is just borderline synthetic functions are getting disturbed for this child. So it's evidence of chronic liver disease, more of mitochondrial injury, still metabolic with anemia and coagulopathy.
So any
Just
other
here-
comment on AST?
Yeah, actually, no, the WBC counts is lower than the normal. And
Actually,
the
it is
platelets
a
are also,
pancytopenia.
yeah, and the platelets are also on the lower side of the normal.
Yes. Yeah.
So that is there. So,
So
there
very
is a
subtle.
pancytopenia.
Yeah,
Very
you're
subtle.
right. Very
Yeah.
subtle, but yeah, need not should not be missed.
Yes.
Actually, he has a pancytopenia.
Yes.
Yeah, so that suggests
Yeah, there is a something like
Some portal hypertension or
or something is going
They
on.
usually 1.2, it's just on the borderline. So
Yes.
we,
Yeah.
but we keep
Yeah.
it
Yes.
in mind. Yeah.
so AST, ALT. One is mitochondrial and cytoplasmic. What else? AST more than ALT. Anybody? Yes, it tells you that there is significant fibrosis in the liver. So initially, in any acute insult to the liver, hepatocyte insult, you have ALT more than AST. But once the chronicity sets in, the fibrosis becomes significant, the AST becomes more than ALT, which is probably what is happening in this patient. So can we move on?
The other one is whether it's an acute or chronic also,
Yeah.
because the bili is more than 5, so it's
Yes.
nearly 7, and the OTPT is also high. Usually, just an ordinary cirrhosis, you might not get this value.
Yes. So there is an acute and chronic insult, as
Yeah.
we said earlier. Okay, go back.
Syndromic diagnosis. We have a chronic liver disease, cirrhosis with portal hypertension, decompensated due to ascites, coagulopathy, and hyperbilirubinemia.
Yeah, so wait there. So what are the final differential diagnoses? Dr. Bavdekar mentioned Wilson's, autoimmune,
Autoimmune,
and
Hep B.
viral hepatitis B. Anything else? Yes, Sridhar? Yes. Dr. Bavdekar, can you comment on that?
That is usually when they present with acute liver failure. When Wilson's presenting as acute liver failure, one of the things to make you suspect that this could be is usually a very low alkaline phosphatase. But this is not really presenting as an acute liver failure in this. But you can't pinpoint which of these 2, 3 are. I mean, this is the workup that I would do. At this particular age, chronic liver disease, we all think it should be Wilson's until proven otherwise, and then go for the rest. And second is autoimmune.
Okay. So, can you show the differentials? Okay. Do you think it's Budd-Chiari? Any point against Budd-Chiari? Pardon?
Albumin, serum albumin, which
Veins.
Is low. It's low.
So
You
but
can.
carry, because then it's an ascites initially and then the liver involvement. So then
Okay.
the albumin gets getting
So,
affected
very
later
important.
on
Yes.
in the Budd-Chiari.
But Chiari usually
So let
is
me finish
abdominal.
that point. Very important point. That in Budd-Chiari, even in the setting of ascites, in the beginning your albumin will be very marginally low or almost normal. So that should make you think, okay, it's something else. So you're right. Ascites, in the later stages you have low albumin, but in the beginning the albumin may be normal. This child has just come in, so probably anything else
Even the-
which is Presentation.
Even the clinical presentation.
Presentation.
Clinical.
Abdominal veins.
Jaundice followed by ascites.
Exactly.
This
So,
is chronic liver disease.
Presentation.
Well, the other way is usually ascites and then you get jaundice. So that
Yeah.
would be something.
so jaundice is very unusual as the presenting symptom of Budd-Chiari. They typically come with ascites unless they come with an acute liver failure, which is very rare with Budd-Chiari. Yeah, there's a question there.
Chronic Budd-Chiari also have a similar picture.
Yes.
You said one jaundice otherwise, but a chronic Budd-Chiari can very well have a similar kind of a picture.
But
Ascites, renal
chronic
not jaundice.
Budd-Chiari or bilirubin levels are usually very marginally raised. They are not, child is not jaundice like this particular level.
If it is there, they become quite sick. It may be a secondary to a nodule pressing or something. They're very sick.
Yes. Okay, we move on.
Other differentials were autoimmune hepatitis, Wilson's disease, and viral hepatitis B or C.
Okay, can we move on?
USG abdomen and Doppler. Hepatomegaly, 14 centimeters plan with coarse echo texture with surface nodularity. Caudate lobe enlargement, moderate ascites. Hepatofugal flow in PV with PV dilated 13 millimeter and splenomegaly of 13 centimeters.
So, Dr. Bavdekar, any comments on the ultrasound?
No, I think
back.
there is evidence. Yeah, just
So it's clearly telling us there is
Portal hypertension.
cirrhosis, portal
Portal
hypertension,
hypertension, yeah.
ascites. Sir, we come.
yes, it's coming to that.
Sir,
And that caudate
sir,
lobe,
please.
that caudate lobe enlargement also, I think
go
we
back,
will have
go
to.
back. So yes, caudate lobe enlargement. Good.
I think
Mansi.
that was a point.
So
for
what
you
is
to
caudate lobe enlargement telling us? Anybody? It's telling us Budd-Chiari? Are we saying it's Budd-Chiari?
Maybe it is usually associated.
Usually, yes, caudate lobe is out of proportion in Budd-Chiari, but it is also a sign of cirrhosis. So caudate lobe enlargement just tells you, it's another thing telling you that there is cirrhosis, chronic liver disease. So it's not always Budd-Chiari, but if it is really out of proportion, you start thinking Budd-Chiari. Okay. There is splenomegaly. Yes. Okay. Yeah. You could have splenomegaly in Budd-Chiari.
Portal hypertension. Post-sinusoidal you could get,
Yeah, I
portal
guess.
hypertension.
Later on in the course, yes. But yes, in the initial, yes, I agree. Point well taken. So what would you look for? We've done a ascitic fluid examination in this case before going to any other etiological blood test. So what would you look for in a ascitic fluid examination? Is it first of all necessary to tap? It's obvious. Ultrasound is showing cirrhosis, fluid there. This is portal hypertension, ascites related to cirrhosis. Why do you need to do a tap?
A diagnostic tap is essential whenever a child presents for the first time with ascites
Very important.
of unexplained.
Yeah,
You must do.
first time ascites has to be tapped. Even if the diagnosis is staring you in the face, it is cirrhosis, it is portal hypertension, but you need to tap it. And we'll come to the reasons why. You can have TB, you can have spontaneous bacterial peritonitis, and you need to confirm that this is indeed a ascites related to cirrhosis. Yeah, can we go on to the next slide? So what else would you do in ascitic fluid? What would you do? Tests in ascitic fluid.
Yeah, as a routine thing, we see a color, cytology, the cells. Okay, and
Are
then
you
we do
thinking
a
of
SAG.
cytology here? Okay, we'll do
Yeah,
a cytology, but
SAG we will go for.
yeah,
So that
SAG.
is a
We'll come to
serum-
SAG. Yeah. What is SAG?
Serum, okay.
What is SAG? Do you do SAG
Serum
routinely?
ascitic albumin gradient.
Yeah.
So we will see
So,
that.
yeah. So we'll
And
talk
it's a
about.
subtraction from the
Ratio.
Yes, we'll talk about SAG. Yeah,
It's a
so just
number.
let's go to the SAG and you'll do cell count, total and differential cell count. And I think this is an important slide. All along we have spoken of transudate and exudate when it comes to ascites, but now we talk of
High albumin
high
gradient.
SAG and low SAG ascites. So basically, what is SAG? It is serum ascitic albumin gradient. You subtract the ascitic fluid albumin from the serum albumin. And you have to have your labs doing fluid albumin. Many labs do not do fluid albumins. If your lab is not doing it, get them to do it. So what does it tell you? If it's more than 1.1, it is the hydrostatic pressure which is more, and that is driving the fluid out into the abdomen. So anything more than 1.1 suggests portal hypertension related ascites, which is cirrhosis Budd-Chiari, and also suggests cardiac ascites or myxedema, which is again cardiac in origin. Anything less than 1.1 is all the other causes of ascites which we know of. So now you have a patient with ascites, talk of high sag, low sag, no more transudates and exudates. Move on, yeah.
Coming to our patient, ascitic fluid examination was suggestive of WBCs 138 cells, lymphocytes 90%, neutrophils 10%. Total protein was 2.7 gram, albumin 0.4 gram. Serum ascitic albumin gradient was calculated as 2, which is more than 1.1. AD of 20, normal range of less than 32. Therefore, high SAG ascites was secondary to portal hypertension.
Okay.
And no.
Any comments here?
And no SBP.
There was no SBP. So you have SBP only in the presence of high SAG ascites. You don't talk of SBP in a low SAG ascites. So only when you know it is portal hypertension related, you talk of SBP, which is more than 250 neutrophils. Yeah, an absolute count of more than 250 neutrophils, which was not here. So don't get carried away or don't get misled by that 90% lymphocytes. What will happen in tuberculosis? What will be the cell count like in tuberculosis?
WBC will be
Anybody?
No, lymphocyte predominant.
total WBC.
Why is this not tuberculosis? 90% lymphocytes.
Total WBC.
SAG is high, but you could have ascites due to cirrhosis and peritoneal TB. We have seen that. But why is this not TB?
ADA,
No, ADA is okay, but why is this not TB?
total WBC.
The cell count itself has to be high. It's usually more than 5, 6, 700. So a cell count of 138 is not TB, even if the lymphocytic count is 90%. So first, look at the total cell count. That's very important. Move on. So is this Budd-Chiari? We have discussed this. No. And we have all the reasons here.
But we
Usually do not present with jaundice, as we said. Mainly present with ascites, which is not easily controlled. In acute presentation, there is pain. Liver is often tender, but again, more often in acute. Relatively preserved function, which Dr. Save said. You have ascites, but the albumin may not be low. Think of Budd-Chiari. Okay, so we have talked about this.
But it's,
And-
you still need to think about the acute on chronic. When acute on chronic picture is there,
It could be Budd-Chiari, you think here?
it could. It could be. I mean,
Okay.
you can't really rule it out
Okay, fair
because
enough.
some of the things then may not apply.
Sure. In an infant presenting with ascites, in our experience, is almost always Budd-Chiari. Though SGPG in the north, they see much older children with Budd-Chiari, but our experience in Maharashtra is it's usually infants and younger children which come with Budd-Chiari. Okay, so we thought overall it is unlikely, but as Dr. Bavdekar said, could be. Okay, so what do you do next, audience?
We
Doppler.
Doppler.
Okay, so she's given the answer. Okay, so basically the Doppler was done. If you notice, the earlier test showed Doppler, but what was there? What was missing?
Hepatic veins.
Dr. Yacha mentioned. The
Hepatic
hepatic veins were not mentioned at all. So whenever you have a patient with ascites, make your radiologist look for hepatic veins. Very important. It's often not mentioned, even though we have asked for a Doppler. So ask for hepatic veins, look for hepatic veins always in a patient with ascites. Now this patient had normal hepatic veins, so we are ruling out Budd-Chiari. Is this autoimmune liver disease? Panelists?
Could be.
Could be
Hypergamma
anything-
is a pointer usually. Just
Did not
didn't
have.
but that cannot exclude.
Important point, high globulins on your liver profile will favor autoimmune, but this patient did not have. Anything else? Go to the points, yeah. No other extrahepatic manifestations, no other autoimmune condition, usually seen in females, but we have enough males with this. So the pointer is high globulin on liver profile, not always, but if it's there, start thinking autoimmune. Next. Next. Dr. Bavdekar, is this Wilson's?
Again, one of the two. I still think it's Wilson's
You think it
or
is
autoimmune,
Wilson's?
one of the two.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not going to say on
Okay.
the basis of this what it is.
Okay, so I think we need to show why we think it could or could not be Wilson's. So this is a young patient with cirrhosis. Yes, there is recurrent jaundice, prolonged acute jaundice last time. Okay, acute liver failure can be a presentation. Usually they come with hemolytic anemia, and then you have the whole lot of neuro findings which they may have. Typically, change in handwriting and a deteriorating scholastic performance in school is what they come with. And very important to ask for family history. We keep going back. There is history of consanguinity here. There is, you should ask for a family history. So likely, Wilson's is likely. Move on. Yes, sure. At the age of 7. Now the child is 12. Unlikely. Agreed. Was a viral hepatitis or something? Yeah. The only thing was that it was a prolonged jaundice. It went on for 2 months. Agreed. Point well taken. Yes. Usually it's in rapid succession. Move on. Next. 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 Yeah. Viral hepatitis, likely, yes, no. History of hospitalization at 8 years of age. You think he's got some infection from there? So he's 12 now. How long does it take for B and C to develop into cirrhosis? Panelists.
See,
Sorry.
yeah.
No, C is a very extremely unlikely. It will take 20, 25 years
Yeah.
for it to develop.
D,
B, if you relate it only to maybe the
episode
enteric
of,
failure episode, you don't know, but it could be something that you could have got it vertical transmission, and this could be the presentation of that. So again, that's something you cannot really rule out.
yeah, but unlikely to be due to this
Yeah.
episode 4 years ago. It takes
Yeah.
about 5 to 7
Yeah.
years for jaundice, for cirrhosis to set in after exposure to hepatitis B. Next.
Now we have the investigations. Viral markers HBsAg, anti-HCV were negative. Autoimmune markers anti-SMA, ANA and LKM were negative. Serum IgG was done 1472. Serum ceruloplasmin was 7.
Dr. Bavdekar, what next?
I would do the other work because
So
now
this
it's
is
finding
Wilson's.
Wilson's disease.
We
yeah.
have one ceruloplasmin. The question is, would you do a liver biopsy?
No.
Okay, so, okay, just show. So reading through, ceruloplasmin is low, copper, 24-hour urine copper is high, and there is a KF ring. Is this enough for diagnosis?
Yes.
Or do we need a liver biopsy?
Yes.
No.
No liver biopsy.
No
Is this
liver
enough?
biopsy, and that is a point we want to make, no liver biopsy. It's a very good all-around,
Too good again.
yes, seen on a naked eye examination actually. Next.
Liver biopsy, role in diagnosis.
I think we can skip this. So there's no pathognomic feature. Good old days we were taught liver copper estimation is the gold standard. It is not. Okay, we move on. I think we don't have time, but we can discuss. You can take the biopsy from the fibrotic tissue, which will not convey your actual liver copper, and it is not very well standardized. So, next. So we have come up with this score. This was part of our consensus meeting, which is a modified Leipzig score. The initial Leipzig score was in 2003. I will not read through it, but you can take down the reference, where if you have more than 4 points, we say it is likely to be Wilson's, where biopsy is just getting 1 point. Biopsy and copper staining is just 1 point. Move on. So
In our patient, the total score was 5 and diagnosis was established, so liver biopsy was not done.
okay, move on. So what about PELD score? What does PELD score tell you, and what is PELD? I think.
Pediatric end-stage liver.
Yeah. So what does it tell us?
It just tells us whether this patient, for transplant mainly, as a prep to see whether this end-stage liver disease, because sometimes you need a scoring which is really uniform, and you have a standard so that you say that yes, this patient may require transplant or not. It's more or less an extrapolation of the MELD which was in adults. So this PELD score is, you can get it downloaded on your thing, and it includes your bilirubin, prothrombin time, creatinine, and then you can get that. So PELD score of more than 32, some say that all depends upon.
Yes. So a high PELD score basically tells you a severity of liver disease, and it tells you that the patient is unlikely to do well. This patient had a pretty high PELT score, and we thought whether he needed a transplant. Go on. There was definite growth failure. Move on. And therefore, growth failure has been incorporated into the PELT score, because in a child who is not growing well is unlikely to do well as far as chronic liver disease is concerned. So how would you manage him quickly? How would you manage his ascites? What are the key points you would like to tell the audience?
Ascites management is basically salt restriction and the diuretic therapy. So the first is the potassium sparing diuretic, spironolactone, and then along with the furosemide, so Lasix. So the diuretic is the salt restriction, along with the diuretic is the mainstay for the therapy.
Any more points?
So once you
Fluid
start
restriction.
So the ascites.
Fluid restriction, do we need to restrict fluid?
Yeah, we can.
Yes or no?
Last.
Yes, put your hands up.
only if the sodium is.
Sodium restriction is
Yes,
more important.
very important. Fluid restriction not required unless there is hyponatremia.
Hyponatremia.
Otherwise, no fluid restriction.
And once we start the definitive therapy, the requirement of furosemide and diuretics also might come down. So it may be you have to monitor regularly. It's not like a decomp liver disease of some other etiology. Yeah.
Okay, so the point we want to emphasize here is they are all malnourished, our cirrhotic children. So they need a very high calorie requirement. The protein requirement is again up to 4 grams per kilo, and you need diuretics. Usually we give spironolactone, start with spironolactone, but give spironolactone and furosemide in the ratio of 5:2 to maintain normokalemia. And don't forget the vaccinations and screening for varices. Next. I think we'll skip this. We'll skip this. We'll skip this. So this patient has a specific treatment started for penicillamine. Any pearls of wisdom, Dr. Bowdekar? Treatment?
No, I think it's fine.
So basically, penicillamine on empty stomach, gradually increase the dose, give pyridoxine with it. Very important, screen the parents and the siblings. We forget to screen the parents. And parents are young, they're often in their 30s, 20s. We've picked up Wilson's at 50 years of age also. So screen the parents, they may be asymptomatic. So very important, and it turns out that this child has an 8-year-old sibling who's asymptomatic and who does have Wilson. So you do a screening with serum ceruloplasmin. If there is a doubt, this is where genetics does help. So if you have the index case mutations known, you can then look for the specific mutation in the siblings if there is a doubt whether the siblings are carriers or they have the disease.
Investigations during the course of treatment. Hemoglobin improved, platelets was 1.5 lakh, enzymes came down, bilirubin came down, albumin improved, INR was 1.2. PELT score came down to 4.
Dr. Bowdekar, can you just comment on what happens to the copper? You need to monitor counts and copper, and of course liver function tests.
Yeah, so urinary copper, if you're talking about the urinary copper, once you start the treatment, usually your urinary copper should go up very high. Theoretically, it should go up to 500 to 1,000 or more. We generally don't see that, I think, because we don't have good estimation methods. And over a period of time, once the child is becoming negatively copper balanced, then slowly your urinary copper will come slowly down. Throughout the life of the child, while the child is on chelators, the urinary copper should be between the range of 200 to 500. Do not expect the urinary copper to any time come back less than 100 as it would be normal. It will never happen. You're using a chelator, copper has to come out. So your good range or correct range is 200 to 500 after the first year or year and a half of treatment.
Growth spurt was seen post-treatment. The child gained height and weight. Summarizing, the 12-year-old boy with consanguinity, jaundice, anorexia, edema, feet, and failure to thrive with symptoms, and he was diagnosed as Wilson's disease. Started on treatment with D-penicillamine and medications for ascites. At the end of 1 year, no jaundice, no ascites. Child was asymptomatic, doing well in school and play.
So we'd like to end our discussion with some take-home messages. Next. Always aim to diagnose a treatable cause of liver disease, even if it seems pretty advanced. Start classifying ascites as high SAG, low SAG. not transudate and exudate, and ask your labs to do fluid albumin. Do focus on nutrition and high protein diet in patients with cirrhosis. Now in this patient, he had a very high PELD score. By this score, you would have said this patient needs a transplant, but Wilson's would be an exception where even with a fairly decompensated disease, this patient escaped a transplant. There are other scoring systems for Wilson's. We have not got into that. But just to say that even in a decompensated state, patients of Wilson's do well on medical treatment and may not need a transplant. For Wilson's disease, any child with cirrhosis, Wilson should be first on the cards. Treatable, as I said, in decompensated stage, and liver biopsy is no longer the gold standard. We use the scoring system to diagnose Wilson's. I think we'll end there. Thank you very much. Thank you, Amulya. Thank you, panelists.